Tim, you get to start this round. And are you ready with your question?
Can you repeat it again just to make sure to make sure I'm following the guideline correctly?
Okay, sure. There is no question. You have the right to ask your competitive candidate to answer a question that you would like to ask of them.
Okay.
So it's directed at a single candidate. And so if you're prepared, we'd like to begin with you.
Sure, yes. Tim Zorc, County Commission, candidate District 3. My question will be for candidate Tony Donadio. My work experience has been working in the fixed price marketplace where when we sold a home, we had to have a fixed price for when the home was delivered to the customer. You didn't get to change the price. If situations changed, the price was still the price. Over the years, you've done a large percentage of your work in government areas where it's done by the RFQ process versus the RFP process. An RFQ is a presentation of qualifications, but not the price for the work. So in essence, a firm may be hired to complete a design job for a local government or school board. They're hired first, and then the firm provides the price later after they're hired. And I'd like to know if you would be in favor of changing this state rule. It is governed by the state, but to be in favor of changing the state rule to restore competitive bidding process to local county governments and school boards.
Thank you, Tim. That's a good question. Request for proposal is a request where you provide a price to do a job. Request for qualifications is you're selected on your qualifications. There's a state statute, Competitive Negotiation Act, whereby under government projects, you have to be selected on your qualifications, your ability to do that job, how much you know about the job. And if you go to fees, then all you're doing is talking numbers, a low bid. Someone that puts in a low fee might not be that qualified, and what happens is then you get a project that is not complete, you get change orders, and it just goes on and on. I think the request for qualification is the best process. It's fair to everybody based on their ability to do the project, not on what they can, how low they can get their fee to get the job. Thank you.
Brian, you get to ask the next question, but before you do that, I've been scolded. I just thought you were going to pass the cards out. The audience gets to ask questions, but we'd like you to write them down. So Carl and Paul will be happy to hand the cards out. Well, you want them to raise their hand?
Raise your hand if you have a question.
And they'll pass you the card, and you can write it, and then they'll get it up to me, so you can be writing your questions down. Now, Brian, you get to ask a question.
My question will be for Nick. We have a mutual opponent in this race that has supported the expenditure of $10 million to buy a golf course, $11 million to purchase development rights west of 95, $12 million to buy the agricultural development rights on agricultural land this side of 95, and a continuation of multi-million-dollar expenditures in sand renourishment each and every single year. Had you been on the commission, had you been a public official during that term, how would you have voted?
Thank you, my friend. That's a softball. No. If you go back and read when Bob was advocating for the Sexton purchase for $12.1 million, there were ample people on the Land Acquisition Advisory Board that were waving their arms at him saying, this is ridiculous. Don't do it. Commission member Joe Fleischer looked at him and said, you're crazy, $12.1 million for a piece of raw land, much of which is wetlands, and they get to keep it and raise cattle on it, and we just get the privilege to pay over $1 million in debt service? I'm not that dumb. Brian, you and I just tend to agree. I don't spend big money on dumb things. And I tend to believe that I would not have bought Dodgertown Golf Course. That's just not what we do as a government. We provide services to people. We are not in the investment game.
Bob, it's your question.
Bob Solari. I have a question for Nick. Nick,
At the Press Journal interview, when I said that liberty was the principle that guided me, and that locally liberty basically was focused on limited government, you said that you were the anti-liberty candidate. Could you please explain to me what it means to be the anti-liberty candidate?
Yes, Bob, you got me. I'm secretly a communist. You validated me. Now, what I was referring to is Bob just, breaks it down to just cartoon level, and I think it's, I'm not part of the Tea Party. I am a Republican, but I'm a Republican for, good old traditional reasons. I don't disagree with what the Tea Party stands for, but I think on a national level, a lot of it is great. But I don't think that we as a community progress just beating the drum with catchphrases. I guess I'm for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think liberty unbounded may devolve into anarchy. But basically, I don't spend a lot of my time thinking about liberty. I'm fully aware of the rights that are being eaten away at as our culture progresses on a national and worldwide level. I'm a smart man, I read the news, but I don't think people are that dull that you can only communicate with them through catchphrases. By the way, my motto is preserve and progress. Thank you.
Keep the mic, it's your question.
My question, Brian, how did you get so good looking? No. No. Now, Brian, my question is one that we've discussed a couple of times, and make a couple assumptions with me. Let's assume Bob does not want to drop out of this race. Are you with me so far? Okay. If someone who you trusted and believed and was omniscient and could see the future made the proposition to you, Brian, you stay in the race, Bob wins. Brian, you get out of the race, Nick wins. Assume with me that that is the truth. What would your answer be?
Well, you asked me to answer a question based on something that I don't believe is accurate. I think that, there's lots of things that win elections. And one of the things that I have in my favor is that I've been involved in this community for 20 years. I've been at the public podium speaking out on the issues, and it's interesting because I listen to people and
Brian, rule number 2, you have to answer the question.
Well, okay, but answering the question in a way that I don't think that his assumption is correct, and I'm trying to explain to him why his assumption is not correct. And if I can't answer the question in a way that says why the assumption is not correct, then I guess I have no answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, Tony, it's your question.
Nick, I have a question for you.
Oh my goodness. Really?
I see your passion for saving the Indian River Lagoon, and I know you're talking about running a culvert out to the Indian River Lagoon. Is there any substantial data to show that would be helpful and would help cleaning that?
Thank you, Tony. That was not what I expected to hear from you, but again, thank you very much for letting me talk about the Indian River Lagoon, which is something I want to do. I grew up here. I spend my life on these waterways, and there is barely a fishing trip that ever takes place where the conversation doesn't turn to the old Bethel Creek and how it used to be an inlet. And wouldn't it be glorious if we could have some fresh water coming into our stretch of the lagoon? I'm not jealous about much in Fort Pierce, but when I cross their North Causeway, I'm like, dang, I wish I had that beautiful water to fish in. And the seagrass and the dolphins and the manatee. I want to bring that back. Now, you asked me if I have any substantial data to back it up. I have spent many hours researching it. There are 2 projects on Cape Cod that I think are the closest. There's one, and I can't say this word, any of my Massachusetts friends, Truro is a township out toward the end of Cape Cod. Truro. Okay, sorry. And they have two projects there. One's called the Herring River. There's a feel-good video about that on the web. Save the Herring River, I believe. But the one that's more intriguing to me is the Pilgrim Lake project, and that's a very similar to what I'm proposing. It's simply a culvert. And just the way I like to describe it, if we can just get the ocean to communicate with the river at Bethel Creek, we can create a virtuous cycle. We're not going to have the Bahamas in one day. We're going to start the ball moving, the grass coming back, the oysters and clams coming back. If I accomplish nothing else in my life, if I could bring our stretch of the river back, I would die a happy man.
Okay, Bea, your question.
Most of you know that this is the August 14th primary that we're talking about, and since the only person that I'm opposing in that race is Tim Zorc, I'm going to ask him the question, and Tony, we'll save yours for another day, okay? On all of my paperwork, it says that I'm running as a small government conservative. Now, my question to Tim Zorc revolves around that particular question. I read in today's Vero Beach News Weekly magazine. It just came out. Tim Zorc's featured in it. And it says here that the staff trimmed 44 employees in the building department, 44 employees down to 14. And Tim says, I'm quoting right from the newspaper that I read today, he says, when things pick up, we'll add staff again. That is not what I would consider to be a small government conservative. You'd be building staff immediately. Tim, can you answer that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is a great question, and thanks for letting me know that article came out in the paper. I'll make sure I pick up a copy tonight. Tim Zorc, Candidate County Commission, District 3. Again, remember, the building department is an enterprise fund. It only survives off the revenue it creates from the permits that it charges its users, the customers, the home builders, the remodelers, etc. So if you scaled down to a bare bones staff from 44 to 14, that's the largest department cut to my knowledge in county government. So if your demand for services increase, the revenue stream to supporting the inspections required by Florida state law mandate have to be completed. So you can't increase the demand and charge for the permit and not correspondingly increase the service that goes along with the permit. In other words, you can't collect the fee for the permit and say, well, gee, since we're so far behind, we can't get to your project to inspect the roof for a week, or your slab inspection that you'd like to have tomorrow we can't get to till next Friday. So the enterprise fund, again, is a great tool. It ramps down when economies slow down and needs for services go down. As the need for services go up and permits come in, the revenue is there to support whatever expanded needs the department needs to have. So I'd like to see more county government drop their departments by 60%. I don't think any other department has gone that far down. But again, it's a demand-driven department, and they're doing a great job and with competitive rates. And I'm Tim Zorc, Candidate County Commission, District 3. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have very many questions. And B, since you didn't get a question, there is one here for you.
Okay. Why didn't I get a question?
Nobody asked you a question. This is from the audience. Ms. Gardner, you have referred to the city council women as clucking hens. How can you expect to work with them in the future? And for the others, how would you raise the level of civility?
First of all, I don't own up to that word. That was probably given to them by somebody that was blogging in on my blog, and I do recall that I was also asked this very same question at another interview that we had. I can tell you that I picked up a letter from the St. Lucie paper, and the headline clearly says, this was on June 29th, not too long ago. The letter says, chickens rule roost at Port St. Lucie City Hall, time to clean the hen house. And it's not unusual for people to use odd names or derogatory names as long as they're not dirty or stiff. And that probably is where it came from. So if you want to refer to that and make that an issue that I wouldn't be able to work with them, I think you're absolutely wrong on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bea. Tim, I don't believe you got a question either, did you? Or no, that's right, Bea asked you one.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have one here for you. It says, what do you mean by reduced cost of right-of-way?
Oh, great question. Tim Zorc, candidate, County Commission, District 3. Since even before filing as a candidate, I've traditionally followed the road expansion projects in the county, and one common phrase that comes up is the disputes that arise between county departments purchasing the right-of-way for roadway projects that are proposed in the capital improvement plans. I've had some instances, one business owner individually said, you know, if they would have approached me courteously, offered me a fair price similar to what my appraiser had come up with, we could have struck this deal and not gone the court process. Instead, they're looking at a lengthy eminent domain process, tens of thousands, if not probably excess of $100,000 to resolve this right-of-way issue. There seemed to be the right-of-way acquisition procedure that they follow seems to instill a non-willingness to cooperate because the way the right-of-way owners have been treated in the past. I've had another owner that says, you know, if they just proposed it nicely, I would have given them the right-of-way, but instead the way the process went, the way I was treated, I'm going to get as much as I can. So if we can instill right-of-way costs sometimes are greater than the actual physical cost of the roadway itself in some instances. And if we can look to work with these property owners in a cooperative fashion and, when possible, get the right-of-way donated. And that will help stretch our roadway dollars much further. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right, I have several questions basically on the same topic. So I'm going to ask each one of you to address it and take 60 seconds, if you could, please. Keep your eye on the timer. Okay. And it has to do with fertilizer runoff into the lagoon from golf courses and ag lands. What is your position on government's role in cleaning that up? Brian, would you start, please?
And Toby, I think it got unplugged when Carl pulled it out right there. I think Carl.
We have a technical difficulty.
I saw it. Toby, do you want me to give him a 30-second warning? Yes. And this as well?
Try, Brian.
We got it now.
Thank you.
Brian Heady, one of the most valuable assets, the most valuable asset that we have here is the environment, the ocean and the river, and we need to do what we need to do to protect it. And if there's fertilizers that are running off and we can have regulations that stop that stop the pollution, then we need to institute regulations to stop the pollution.
I'm famously known for being the person who doesn't believe that more regulation is the solution to this problem. I'll note that Toby asked about golf courses and ag lands. With citrus lands, this process began many years ago, probably about 20 years ago, and citrus developed best management practices. So no government regulation, but best management practices to work on that problem, and they've done tremendous work in that direction, limiting the runoff into the water. With golf courses also had a lobby, and they were able to use best management practices. And I think that's the way to go, and no, people don't complain about that. I believe that the citizens have a lobby, and that's their Board of County Commissioners. And this Board of County Commissioners has decided that education is the proper way to go, and I believe that. And education will work. We've noted that the private sector has already promised to take phosphorus out of the fertilizer, so that'll hit a big part of the problem. But I believe that the citizens of Indian River County are smart enough and virtuous enough to do the right thing once they know what the right thing is. Bob Solari, thank you very much.
Nick Thomas here. This is just going too well for me tonight in one respect. First of all, I've tried to be very clear about my plan for the lagoon. You absolutely passed the ordinance right away, limiting phosphorus and fast release nitrogen. You do it yesterday. Indian River Shores has already done it. Sebastian's already done it. Municipalities all over the state are doing it. It is just almost too delicious. Bob sits up here and says education is the key, and I was informed right before I came over here today that I've only got this from one source, so you reporters out there, that a Miss Diane Wilson lost her job today in the budget hearings. Guess who Diane Wilson is? She is the stormwater education coordinator for the county of Indian River. The one person whose job it was to educate has been fired. We passed the ordinance. We opened the lagoon at Bethel Creek. We get on with it.
Thank you, Nick. Tony?
I agree, we can be overregulated. I think we can control taking the phosphorus and the nitrogen out of the fertilizers by the companies, by the public citizens, to help save Rainy River Lagoon. Also, the other thing we need to look at too is there's always the issue of the stormwater runoff and controlling it and where it goes. And that's one thing we need to look at too, whether we reroute it to the west with, towards the stormwater banking. That's another option to take care of that. But I think regulation is not the answer. It's making sure that the phosphorus and the nitrogens get out to the companies, to the citizens, as they do with best practices. Thank you.
When something's not good, the first thing that we seem to refer to is what can our government do to make it better. And if it's not good to put these phosphorus fertilizers, the ones that have too much phosphorus in them, if that's not good to put it in your grass, to make your grass green, and then the clippings go into the lagoon, it needs to be, as Bob said, it needs to be educated to the public that this is what we want to do. We want to go to the store, we want to buy a fertilizer that does not have the dangerous things in it that are causing problem to the lagoon. So best management practices is always the way to go, and less government involvement is. And sometimes when you pass these kinds of ordinances, it's merely to make yourself feel good as a government, instead of what it's really going to be. How are you going to regulate it anyways if you pass it? You're going to go around and look at people's yards and see what they put in it? So I think the less government in this situation, the better. I'm Bea Gardner, thank you.
Hi, Tim Zorc, candidate, County Commission, District 3. Yes, as being born and raised there, I've seen the decline of the lagoon, the fishing trips on Friday nights with my dad up at the Wabasso Bridge on Friday nights where you can see the abundant sea life are gone. I think there's a number of efforts that need to be undertaken. The Bethel Creek one, I think, has a lot of merit. Can it be engineeringly done? I've done some research on that, and it seems feasible. But all of our water quality tests seem to originate once the canals hit the river. I would personally like to see if you take the canals and you run them backwards to the western part of the county and see, is there a spike in a particular area where the phosphate levels increase that you can then point to a specific source that's really contributing, or is it a gradual across the county? If you don't know exactly what's causing the problem, how do you exactly fix it? So I'd like to run sampling information from the river backwards to the source point back to the western part of the county and understand the problem. And if you understand the problem, then you can devise a solution to fix it. Thank you. Tim Zorc, candidate, County Commission, District 3.
Thank you. Nick, the next question is for you. It's on a similar topic, your topic. when opening Bethel Creek and changing the tide flows, how will the beaches and the tides be affected for the use by the county residents?
I didn't quite the beaches and the tides. I'll be happy to take a minute and talk more about my plan. One of the...
Nick,
I'm sorry.
you made me remind Brian to answer the question.
Well, let me
Now I have to remind you to answer the
I
question.
just didn't quite follow it, I'm sorry.
Right. Well, I'm reading it as it's intended to be asked. They said when opening Bethel Creek.
Clarify that. My question is, if you're talking about putting some kind of opening in Bethel Creek, where we all know at one time there was a natural inlet there. If you take that and you put a good sized culvert in there, you're gonna have to have such a huge culvert to do anything, to make a difference in that river. You ever stood at Sebastian Inlet? Supposedly every 6 hours that tide changes. I've seen it in storm times, and I stood there with my watch for 14 hours to watch that tide run out to sea. You change those tides around that beach where everybody's got to play on the beach, you're gonna have more problems. You're gonna have people getting drowned over there and everything else. Or, I don't know if you've done any
Sir,
research on
sir,
no.
changes.
Sir, hang on, Nick. Hang on. We've asked everybody to write their question,
Right.
and we do that for a reason. So
But it just sounds-
I would ask that you let me ask the question. Okay? Nick, he obviously doesn't think your plan is, he thinks it may cause damage to the beach due to affecting the tides, affecting the beach. And have you studied that, and what are those, what's going to happen with your plan to the beach?
Okay, I can tell you, I'll try and describe what it is that's in my head, and what I'm describing, and what I've learned from reading about Pilgrim Lake and the Herring River. Sir, I'm picturing something far more gentle than that. Remember, Bethel Creek is lined with homes, and those homes have seawalls. If water runs at faster than, I'm not a scientist, 2.5 feet a second or something like that, you get what's called scrubbing. I don't want to, what I'm proposing is that the pipes go one way, that we gently introduce water into the Indian River Lagoon at Bethel Creek. And what we do is we create a virtuous cycle. I can't promise Bahama Blue water coming in, and I can assure you, to the best of my knowledge, that there would be no disruption at all to the beaches. What we're trying to do is just take some, it's like putting a stent in a bad artery by the heart. We're just trying to get some communication there. And then we create a virtuous cycle where if we take back Bethel Creek, then and get the algae out of there, then we get the seagrass back, and the good things start happening. When the mollusks, the oysters and the clam come back, they have their own filtering action. And then when the wintertime comes, when it's
I need you to wrap it up.
Okay. When the wintertime comes and the canals are not flowing during our dry season, then we start catching up. And if we see it works great there, we put another one down by Round Island. This is not...
Nick.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. All right. At this point, I would like to move to the candidates' closing statements, and we're going to go in reverse order. So, Tim, I would like for you to go first. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement. You can address whatever you think we need to know, issues that were brought up here tonight. Keep your eye on the lady with the timer.
Yes, thank you. Tim Zorc, candidate, County Commission, District 3. Thank you again, Indian Tea Party, for hosting us here tonight. Again, why should you vote for Tim Zorc for County Commission, District 3? A number of reasons. One, you have a little bit of a competitive edge knowing what the county used to be like and what it's like today, and what areas you'd like to see restored back to its earlier days. I remember being at this building, but more importantly, who can remember being at Pocahontas Park, playing on the jet that was in the playground area that's now at the Naval Museum in Pensacola. Mark Beecher's waving that he remembers playing on that when he was younger. But back to this more of the serious side, knowing how government functions can help you understand how to improve it and make it better. My nearly 30 years experience of working with county government, the agencies that issued permits or regulations or oversight or had a comment on something, that knowledge of all those years gives you a better experience on how to fix the problem. There's some departments I think that the county has that run extremely well. when the county looks at cutting budgets, they cut departments equally across the board the same percentage. Some departments probably need to have a greater cut because they were far more bloated before the economic slowdown than they are today. Even though they've had some significant cuts, there's probably still more room to do it. We also have a large number of senior management in the county that will be retiring within the next few years in the drop program. I think that gives us a great time to reorganize and reshuffle the organizational structure of the county government to make it, again, more efficient, efficiency, reduce costs, reduce taxes, and it's a win-win for the taxpayers in the county. Again, I am Tim Zorc, candidate, County Commission, District 3, and I look forward to your vote on August the 14th. Thank you.
My name is Bea Gardner. I too am running for County Commission District 3C. I had to Google the job of a county commissioner before I really understood what we do. There's two things a county commissioner does. They oversee the budget of the county. There's the budget. Tim brought it today. Usually I carry it. It's very large. And they set policy. The commissioners set policy on two areas of government: land use and environmental issues. Now, we've heard everybody come up here with solutions for everything, but you know what? We have department heads that put us all in the right track on all of these things, and again, all we're asked to do with our homework is to check on how we're going to vote on these issues. Now, people that know me know that I'm a hard worker. I am someone who would do the homework that needs to be done in order to do a good job as your commissioner, and I will not be a rubber stamp, especially for staff. I know my way around the county offices, and I know the staff, and I assure you that I can be up and running on the first day of the job. I believe this seat has been underserved for far too long, and when I am elected, I will be right here for you. My door will always be open. And that is why I'm asking for your vote on August 14th. My name is Bea Gardner. Thank you.
Tony Donadio, County Commission District 3 candidate. One thing I'd like to go back to the RFQ process, because I failed to mention, it's important because when it talks about fees and dollars to the taxpayer, when an architect or engineer or professional is selected on a qualification basis, they're ranked in order of 1, 2, 3. And then the fees are negotiated. And if they can't negotiate with the first one, they go to the next one. So I just want to say that's what happens. It's in the best interest. It's not just the fee that the county accepts and they take it and run with it. So they actually work to make sure the fees are competitive. Why am I running? Because I want to make a difference in this community. I have vision, accountability, leadership, and responsibility. I'm a person of conservative values and fiscal responsibility. I believe in limited government and free market solutions. For over 30 years, I've had a relationship with Inver County on personal, professional, and philanthropic. You've heard about my vision. I listen to people. I research and evaluate the information, and I compromise when needed. It's one thing to listen to people and to think about the issues. It's another thing to listen to them and put yourself in your shoes and empathize them and find out what it means to them and how it's going to affect them. And when I say that, I'm talking about the unemployed, the single parent, the retiree, the fixed income person, and you, the taxpayer, and even the small businessman. So that's why I'm running for county commissioner. And vote Tony Donadio, November 6th. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nick Thomas. Just briefly, I hope. Tim and I are similar. We grew up together. We went to St. Helens together. We went to Vero Beach High School together. But then, and no disrespect, but I moved on in my life. I went on and got my college degree. I went to graduate school. I went to law school. I've practiced law in Washington, D.C. I've run my own law practice for 20 years. I've traveled widely through the United States and Western Europe. I've seen things. I'm a lifelong reader. I'm a person who brings a lot of context to the decisions we have to make. I love Vero in Indian River County, and it's in my heart, but it's not the only place I've ever been. I have half a lifetime of experience to serve you with. And now that I'm in the stage of my life where I just turned 50, I want to be here. I want to serve for the next 13 years. I want to serve until this county and this city turn 100 years old, at which point I want to turn it over to another like-minded citizen of the, maybe perhaps grew up here, and keep faith with the past. You know, times are tough, but that doesn't mean we sell out. That doesn't mean we turn on our neighbor. This is Indian River County. We're special, and I'm here to keep it that way.
Hi, I'm Bob Solari, candidate for District 5. I'm City County Commissioner, and I believe the County Commission has done a very good job over the last 4 years in very difficult times. I think the easiest way of seeing that is to just drive around this county. This county functions well. It's a beautiful place to live. People are coming to it, not leaving it. I will note that I've talked a lot in this campaign about liberty. On the front of each one of my campaign cards, which obviously the radio audience can't see, so I'll read, I have one goal in this campaign, aside from winning the actual campaign, and that's liberty. And for me, locally, liberty means government responsive to the needs of our citizens, but limited to the efficient delivery of essential services. My opponent thinks that's a catchphrase. I believe that's a principle, and I don't know of any single principle in America that is better to guide its public services servants than that. I hope that you will elect Bob Solari for a second term and allow me to press for liberty in Indian River County. Thank you very much.
My name is Brian Heady, and for 20 years I've been involved as a citizen in our governing authorities here in this community. I found out how important, when I served for 2 years on City Council, I found out how important it was not to just be at the public podium, but to actually have the vote on the issues that come before us. When I was on City Council, I did things that Bob did not do when he was on City Council. He never moved the electric issue forward. He never had invited FP&L to the table. He never discounted the county electric rates. I did all of that as a city councilman. The vote is important. Bob talks about liberty. I think the reason he talks about liberty is he doesn't want to talk about his record of expenditures. When asked about the salary, Bob said he never took a significant look at the salary they pay a county commissioner. It's $56,000. I'll tell you, I did take a significant look at it. And I think that is a lot of money, and I'll work very hard to earn that money. And I think that anyone that thinks $56,000 is not worth a significant look probably shouldn't be handling our tax dollars. I think that when you talk about cutting travel expense, which amounts to a couple $1,000s, but then you spend $2.5 million to a special interest group, to the private sector, when you dump $15 million on the beach and sand that washes away in the next storm, those expenditures pretty much outweigh the couple $1,000s that you save in travel expenses. I'm Brian Heady. If you've been watching over the last 20 years, you know where I stand on these issues. You know that I'll vote against tax increases. You know that I'll respect the taxes. Vote for Brian Heady on August the 14th.
All right, whether you agree with the candidates or not, you must respect their willingness to come up here and take the heat, answer the questions, and be willing to serve Indian River County. So I'd like for you to show your appreciation for that. Thank the audience for being here, those that are listening in by radio. I am going to take a minute and make a plug for the Indian River Tea Party. We do stand for fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free market solutions. You might have noticed a running theme in those questions. We believe that government should not do what individuals can and should do for themselves. We are looking for patriots to serve in every position of government, local, state, and federal. And we believe every people gets the government they deserve. What that means is you must get involved. Our government is better when we are involved. So we ask that you get involved, pay attention, hold their feet to the fire. The Indian River Tea Party has decided to launch a number of letters We had our first letter in the paper explaining who we are, what we stand for, and we're writing a position on our 3 tenants. And we will have an upcoming letter on the school board 6 mil referendum. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you for being here tonight. May God bless America.